But let's get back to our original rundown here, much closer to home. We start with a Kerry Kennedy trial in White Plains. A jury today acquitting of misdemeanor drug driving after a road accident back in 2012. The daughter of RFK and the ex-wife of Governor Andrew Cuomo claimed that she mistook a sleeping pill for her thyroid medication that morning. Prosecutors said Kennedy should have pulled over as soon as she felt the side effects. Well, joining us now to talk about the verdict is Kerry Kennedy's attorney, Bill Aronwald, a good friend to the program, and also with us, of course, RFL panelists Dominic Carter and Andrew, who you already met. And Bill, first of all, I guess congratulations to you and your client. And I saw something interesting, which is, if you look at the numbers, this is the exception, not the norm here. Usually when faced with these charges, there's not acquittal at the end of the day. Obviously, you thought you'd get this verdict here, but pleasantly surprised, can we say it that way?
Oh yeah, pleasantly surprised. The result was not unexpected. I mean, my co-counsel Jerry Lefcourt and I, we both basically went into this case knowing what the evidence was and what the evidence wasn't. We made every effort, meeting with the district attorney herself on 2 separate occasions, to persuade her that these charges should not go forward, that there simply was not enough evidence to sustain the charge. Let me just back up. Generally, driving while impaired is what's called a strict liability statute. If you're driving and you've got something in your system you're not supposed to have, you're guilty. That's it. There is an exception, and it really applies only to drug cases. You can't claim that you accidentally ingested 6 glasses of vodka. You know, it just doesn't happen.
Thought it was water. Didn't work
That's
that
right.
way, yeah.
I know. But with drugs, the law is very clear that if you accidentally or mistakenly take one drug thinking you were taking something else, in this case, Kerry has a daily Synthroid medication she takes every morning. She's been taking it for years. She has Zolpidem, which is prescribed, which is Ambien, and she only uses that when she travels internationally in connection with the Robert F. Kennedy Foundation for Justice and Human Rights. So when she crosses multiple time zones, as many people do, she takes a sleeping pill to help her sleep and adjust to those time zones. In this particular situation, she was getting ready to take a trip. She took the Zolpidem bottle and put it next on the counter next to the Synthroid bottle because she was packing and planning to go on this trip 2 days later. On the way out of the house on July 13th, in gym clothes, going to the gym, and then after working out, showering, changing, and going into her office in Manhattan, she mistakenly took the wrong bottle. And instead of taking a Synthroid, she took a pill of Zolpidem, all right? And then 20 minutes later, while driving on 684, she shut down.
Yep.
She became a robot. She was driving, but she really had no perception or cognitive ability. She had no decision-making ability. And so as a result, she was impaired. So our position was that even though it's a strict liability statute, since this was an accidental ingestion, and since she did not have any knowledge that she was impaired, and the FDA has verified this, the case did not warrant prosecution.
Well, obviously, the jury heard it your way. You heard a lot of the questions that came out, which is, listen, I get it if a person's, somebody slips somebody a drug in their drink in a bar or whatever, that person shouldn't have any responsibility what happens next. But even if it's an accident, the person took the wrong pill. It's their responsibility to know what they're ingesting in their body.
Yeah, but the law is different. Basically, it's not a crime if you have an accident, if you make a mistake. So in this particular situation, the district attorney never disputed the fact that this was an accidental ingestion.
So would it have mattered if, and thankfully, while there was an accident, no one was injured, would it have mattered if the car that she had hit went off the side of the road and, God forbid, there was a fatality? Would she have faced different charges, or whatever happened after she accidentally took that pill wasn't her fault?
With respect to the crime that she was charged with and that she was found not guilty of, it wouldn't have made a difference, okay, your scenario.
Yeah.
But if that had happened, then there are other charges which could have come into play, which involve negligence, okay, reckless conduct, okay, where you're not dealing with something where it's all influenced or informed by whether there's a drug in her system. What I'm saying to you is this. Kerry was very fortunate, okay? The district attorney's position was, whether it was because of bad judgment on their part or because it was a Kennedy, they decided that they were going to go to trial unless we agreed to plead guilty to the charge.
And Bill, if I could for a second, a lot of questions related to whether or not your client was treated fairly or unfairly because of her last name. And the Westchester County DA's office spoke to that because the people said, "Hey, you're trying to make your bones off of the last of the client here because of her last name." And they said, "We prosecute 2,500 impaired driving cases every year in Westchester County. Case was treated no differently than any others. Jury heard all the evidence. They decided the way they did. We respect the verdict." Do you buy that?
Shame on them. Look, 2,500 impaired cases. How many of those cases involved alcohol? How many of those cases involved drugs? How many of those cases involved Ambien? How many of those Ambien cases involved the claim where it was an accident? Okay, so you're talking apples and oranges.
So if it was Dominic, no, I'll pick a better example. If it was Andrew and this happened to him, he wouldn't have seen the inside of a courthouse, you don't think?
You know, unfortunately, I think the way things are in Westchester County, I'm not sure it would have made a difference. What I'm saying is, as far as I'm concerned, I can only attribute their decision to go forward with this case to two possibilities: bad judgment in basically underestimating their chances of winning, or they deciding to go forward because of who she was, Kerry Kennedy. You know, and there's one other thing. We hired an expert in this case at a cost of $7,500. We also ordered a daily copy of the transcript of some of the witnesses. That's like $5 a page. It was not inexpensive. She had two lawyers, okay? And neither one of us.
And you're not pro bono.
Neither one of us worked. Neither one of us worked cheaply. This case cost her a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. What if it was somebody who didn't have those resources?
And she spoke to that.
And what if? How much did this case cost the taxpayers of Westchester County to prosecute?
Well, also there was a cost, you can argue, in terms of the coverage. And I want to give you a chance to respond. Listen, this is not new ground here. The New York Post, they like to sell their papers with sensational headlines, but I thought even for them, this one crossed the line. Pity me, I'm an orphan. This after your client talked about her father and obviously his assassination. First off, I'll give you a chance to respond to the headline. What was your client's take here when they saw the caption next to her face?
Well, Kerry made a conscious decision that she was not going to look at any of the papers, read the media, and so she was not aware of the headline until we told her about it. My reaction to it, it was tasteless, it was shameful, and it brought journalism to a new low, even for the New York Post. The fact of the matter is, her testimony concerning her background was critical and relevant to the jury's ability to assess her credibility. In every case.
Well, how, listen, I do the same thing if I was you, but tell me how, in a DWAI case, who her father was and how her father died and how, obviously, the Kennedy family sacrifices to American history throughout the years. What's that relevant about what happened on 684?
Because the judge will instruct the jury that whenever they assess the credibility of a witness, they have to take into account a variety of factors, including whether the witness has a prior criminal record, what's the witness's background, where does she come from, what does she do, what's her life history. And that's all that we were trying to do. We were trying to put that before the jury. Look, I dare say that the chances are that there were a few people on that jury who were not aware of her background, although I would say that I think that most of the people on the jury would not have remembered Robert Kennedy's assassination.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, how many years ago was it?
It's one of the
over 40 years ago.
tragic moments in American history.
Well, it was over 40 years ago, right? Okay, but what I'm saying is that it was not at all improper to bring out her history and her background. There was nothing improper about it. What the Post did, you know, they have an agenda. And that headline really, I think, did a disservice even to that newspaper.
At the end of the day, during the trial, the last thing for me, and then you guys jump in, was there any moment where she said, it's just not worth it? Forget about the price tag that she's got to pay here. The front pages, the Posts of the world dragging your name through this. They went to you guys and tried to quietly say, plead guilty, this will make the thing go away, right? I mean, was there ever a moment where she said, it's just not worth it?
They never came to us and said, why don't you make this go away by pleading guilty, because they knew from the very outset there was no possibility of a guilty plea to this charge. And the reason is because she was not legally guilty of this charge, and there was no evidence to prove that she was. So, you know, the answer to the question, I think, is, did she ever say this is not worth it? Kerry was very determined that her name was not going to be blemished by a criminal conviction for something she didn't do. And more importantly, she is the face of the Robert F. Kennedy Foundation for Human Rights and Justice. She travels all over the world. They do excellent work for human rights. And so she knew that had she pled guilty or been convicted, then that would have really hurt the ability of the foundation to do the good work it does.
Here, nonetheless, though, you look at the numbers, doesn't always go this way. And obviously, congratulations to Bill. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank
I know
you.
it's been a busy day, and thanks for giving us a few tonight.
My pleasure.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to stay in New York, and Rob Astorino, expected widely by many here to be the Republican challenger to the aforementioned Andrew Cuomo when it comes to deciding who New York's next governor will be here. We're going to bring in one of his closest counselors to tell us what the next step will be here and some of the challenges the Astorino campaign may face.